It was exactly 11:30 at night. Lynette Hooker picked up her phone and sent a voice message to her daughter, Carly Ellsworth. In that message, Lynette Hooker's voice was slurred. She sounded heavily intoxicated. Carly Ellsworth listened to the message, smiled to herself, typed back a quick, casual reply, and went to sleep. Carly Ellsworth had absolutely no idea that this would be the last time she would ever hear her mother's voice. By the next morning, Lynette Hooker was gone, vanished into the dark, unforgiving waters of the Bahamas. For months, the story told to the world by her husband was one of a tragic, unavoidable accident. But now, Carly Ellsworth has stepped forward and revealed a chilling secret that has completely shattered this case wide open. This is no longer a simple missing persons case. Carly Ellsworth has publicly revealed a terrifying truth she knew even before Lynette Hooker disappeared. Looking straight into the camera, Carly Ellsworth stated clearly about her mother's husband, Brian Hooker. He said he was going to do it, and now it's happening. Did Brian Hooker truly throw his wife into the pitch-black ocean? Today, we are tearing apart Brian Hooker's alibi. We are looking at the digital evidence, the unused $33,000 lifeline left on their boat, and the dark history of domestic violence that has turned a tragic accident into a full-scale federal homicide investigation. Keep watching, because the secret Carly Ellsworth just revealed will make your blood run cold. Before we descend into the total darkness of that April night, you need to understand exactly who Lynette Hooker was, because Lynette Hooker's identity is the very first piece of evidence that makes this entire story completely unravel. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old, originally from Onstead, Michigan. Onstead is a tiny village surrounded by 50 lakes within a 50-mile radius. In a town like that, children learn to swim before they learn to walk. Lynette Hooker was not just a casual beachgoer who panicked in deep water. She was a highly experienced mariner and an incredibly strong, capable swimmer. She respected the water, she understood the currents, and she knew exactly how to survive in it. Hold on to that fact, because as we look into Brian Hooker's story, Lynette Hooker's lifelong swimming ability is going to matter enormously. Lynette Hooker and her husband, Brian Hooker, had been together for 25 years. To the outside world looking in, Brian and Lynette were living the ultimate dream. They sold everything they owned, bought a beautiful yacht named Soulmate, and sailed the world. They documented their pristine, sun-soaked life on YouTube and TikTok under the name The Sailing Hookers. But as is so often the case in true crime, the camera only captured the illusion. Behind closed doors, away from the internet's eyes, a very different, deeply toxic reality was playing out between Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker. Let me walk you through the timeline of the night everything changed. On Saturday, April 4th, at around 7:30 in the evening, Lynette Hooker and Brian Hooker left a local spot in the Bahamas and climbed into their small, 8-foot inflatable dinghy. They were making the short, half-mile trip back to their anchored yacht, the Soulmate. It was a trip Brian Hooker and Lynette Hooker had made hundreds of times. The sun was just starting to set, casting long, dark shadows over the water. According to the official statement Brian Hooker gave to authorities, within minutes of leaving the dock, the weather suddenly turned violent. Winds picked up aggressively, and the waves swelled to 3 feet. Somewhere in that chaotic chop, Brian Hooker claims Lynette Hooker simply bounced out of the boat and vanished into the water. Listen very closely to Brian Hooker's exact sequence of events, because investigators certainly did. Brian Hooker says Lynette Hooker had the engine safety lanyard wrapped around her neck. This is a safety key designed to kill the engine if the driver falls out. When Lynette Hooker went overboard, the key went with her, immediately killing the dinghy's engine. Brian Hooker claims he was left completely powerless in the rising waves. He said he desperately tried to row, but the metal pin on the oar suddenly snapped, dropping his only paddle into the sea. Brian Hooker claims he threw the anchor out and screamed Lynette Hooker's name into the dock, but the wind pushed them apart so fast that within moments, she was gone. Brian Hooker says he drifted alone in the pitch black for hours before finally washing up on a nearby island and calling for help at 5:12 a.m. Nearly 10 agonizing hours after Lynette Hooker went into the water. On the surface, Brian Hooker's story sounds like a perfect storm of horrific luck. Every single safeguard, the engine, the key, the oar, the weather, failed at the exact same moment. But homicide investigators do not believe in perfect storms. They listen to stories like this with a deeply critical eye. Let's pull at the very first thread. Remember how we established that Lynette Hooker was an expert swimmer, who grew up navigating the lakes of Michigan, the area where Brian Hooker says she fell in was not the treacherous, bottomless open ocean. It was a shallow bay, just half a mile from the shore. How does Lynette Hooker, a lifelong, powerful swimmer, slip off a slow-moving inflatable boat in a shallow bay and simply vanish without leaving a single trace? People do drown, but this detail did not sit right with her daughter Carly Ellsworth, and it certainly didn't sit right with the authorities. But then came the twist that turned this case completely upside down. After Lynette Hooker disappeared, investigators seized Brian Hooker's electronic devices. When a person lies, their words might hold up under pressure, but their digital footprint is completely ruthless. During questioning, Brian Hooker pointed investigators to a specific location on the map. Brian Hooker told the Coast Guard exactly where Lynette Hooker went into the water. Acting on his word, the Coast Guard spent immense resources, time, and manpower searching that exact grid. They found absolutely nothing. Then, the GPS tracking data from Brian Hooker's own devices was extracted. The location data completely and utterly contradicted Brian Hooker's story. It proved that on the night of April 4th, Brian Hooker's movements were nowhere near the area he had pointed the authorities toward. Brian Hooker's own phone proved he intentionally sent the rescue teams to look in the wrong place. Think about the terrifying gravity of that action. Brian Hooker is a seasoned sailor, a man who navigates the unforgiving ocean for a living, and yet he somehow points the Coast Guard to an area where Lynette Hooker definitely wasn't. The prosecution's read on this is chillingly simple. The only reason a man points rescue searchers to the wrong place is if he desperately does not want them to find what is hidden in the right place. If Brian Hooker's GPS data is a red flag, this next piece of evidence is a blaring, deafening siren. Aboard the Soulmate yacht was a highly advanced, military-grade thermal infrared camera worth $33,000. This was not a basic, cheap security camera. It had a highly sensitive self-tracking feature specifically designed to detect human body heat in pitch-black darkness. It was built for one primary purpose: to find a human being who has fallen overboard at night. If your spouse falls into the dark ocean, and you are fighting to save the love of your life, this $33,000 device is the very first thing you turn on. You would tear the boat apart to get to it. Yet, on the night Lynette Hooker disappeared, Brian Hooker never touched it. The camera sat completely dormant and unused. Even worse, Brian Hooker never even mentioned this life-saving technology to the Coast Guard. They only found out about it weeks later when a friend of the couple informed the police. Why would a grieving husband hide his best tool for finding his wife? On April 8th, the Royal Bahamas police force arrested Brian Hooker based on probable cause. They locked Brian Hooker in a cell for 5 full days, the absolute maximum time allowed under Bahamian law without formal charges. When forced to release him due to the lack of a physical body, Brian Hooker looked at the news cameras and vowed he would stay in the Bahamas to search for Lynette Hooker until his last breath. The very next day, Brian Hooker boarded a plane, left the country, and has kept a profoundly low profile ever since. All of the digital and circumstantial evidence paints a dark picture, but the case truly ignited when Lynette Hooker's daughter, Carly Ellsworth, stepped in front of the microphones. What Carly Ellsworth revealed didn't just contradict Brian Hooker's story. It provided the exact, horrifying motive investigators were desperately looking for. Carly Ellsworth knew the truth about her mother's marriage long before the tragedy struck. Carly Ellsworth shattered the perfect sailing couple illusion by revealing that Brian Hooker had a long, hidden history of extreme domestic violence against Lynette Hooker. Carly Ellsworth detailed that the couple had struggled with alcohol, and when Brian Hooker drank, he became violently dangerous. Carly Ellsworth stated on the record that Brian Hooker had physically attacked Lynette Hooker before, specifically targeting her neck in violent altercations. In domestic abuse cases, experts know that this specific type of physical assault is the single highest predictor of a future tragedy. This wasn't a bad argument. These were prior, terrifying attempts to harm Lynette Hooker. But the most devastating piece of information Carly Ellsworth shared, the statement that legal experts believe might just put Brian Hooker in a prison cell forever, was a specific, calculated threat. Carly Ellsworth revealed that Brian Hooker had explicitly, verbally threatened to throw Lynette Hooker overboard. Let that sink in. Brian Hooker violently attacks his wife. Brian Hooker verbally threatens to throw Lynette Hooker off their boat into the ocean. And then, months later, Lynette Hooker mysteriously bounces out of a dinghy in the middle of the night while completely alone with Brian Hooker. As Carly Ellsworth chillingly put it, The fact that this is happening now, it's just funny because he said he was going to do this, and now it's happening. Legal experts and crime scene analysts are pointing to Carly Aylesworth's revelation as the absolute linchpin of this entire investigation. Because Brian Hooker made a highly specific threat about throwing Lynette Hooker overboard, investigators now have a documented pattern of behavior and undeniable premeditation. The United States Coast Guard Investigative Service did not let this go. They have seized that 8-foot dinghy. It is currently locked in federal custody. Experts are weighing in, stating that because of Carly Aylesworth's testimony, the burden of physical evidence required for conviction is drastically lower. If forensic technicians find even a microscopic drop of blood, a cracked fiberglass edge indicating a desperate struggle, or a single torn fingernail belonging to Lynette Hooker on that small boat, it will be the ultimate nail in Brian Hooker's coffin. That tiny dinghy is currently being dismantled inch by inch, searching for the ghost of Lynette Hooker. As of June 5th, the Coast Guard officially suspended their physical search of the ocean. Lynette Hooker's body has still not been found. Brian Hooker remains a free man. Brian Hooker has not been formally charged with a crime. He vehemently denies all allegations, and under the law, he is presumed innocent. Brian Hooker's defense will undoubtedly stand in a courtroom and argue that you cannot prove a crime without a body. But the physical search ending does not mean the investigation is over. In fact, it has escalated to the highest possible level. Federal authorities are no longer treating the disappearance of Lynette Hooker as an accident or a missing person case. The death of Lynette Hooker is now officially being investigated as a homicide. The FBI has taken over the physical evidence. DNA swabs have been collected from Carly Aylesworth and the rest of Lynette Hooker's grieving family. The digital data, the seized dinghy, and the unused thermal camera are all sitting in the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, waiting to tell the horrifying story Lynette Hooker no longer can. As we wait for the FBI's findings, I leave you with one final question to ask yourself. If the woman you loved more than anything in the world fell into the dark ocean, and you were sitting feet away from a $33,000 thermal camera designed to save her life, why wouldn't you turn it on? What do you believe happened on that boat? Was it a series of horrific coincidences? Or did Brian Hooker do exactly what Carly Aylesworth knew he promised he would? Drop your verdict in the comments below. If you want us to keep bringing you the truth behind these mysteries, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay safe and always trust your instincts.